Hello, welcome to News on NTA International. I'm Nancy Godi Angonihu. First, the headlines. President Buhari approves Nigeria's transition into third phase of national response to COVID-19 for another period of 4 weeks, with effect from Friday, 4th September. Federal government directs Ministry of Agriculture to release grains of maize to poultry farmers. Plus, experts provide solution to perennial flooding to mitigate disaster. Now details of the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to release 5,000 tons of grains of maize from the National Strategic Grains Reserve poultry farmers. The directive was conveyed to the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Mohammed Sabo Nanono, in a letter from the State House signed by the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari. The minister says the grains will be released to poultry farmers at a subsidized rate of 90,000 naira per metric ton as against the current market price of 170,000 naira. Nanono assures that the ministry will immediately comply with the presidential directive in order to salvage the huge investment of about 10 trillion naira in the industry. The poultry industry accounts for about 27% of the agricultural gross domestic product of the economy and provides about 20 million direct and indirect employments. And President Muhammadu Buhari is urging the governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, to keep faith with the next level of agenda and remain focused in the implementation of his people-centered policies and programs for enhanced security, stability, and socio-economic development. This was while granting audience to the governor in his office. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo has the report.
Governor Dapo Abiodun was in the State House to present to President Muhammadu Buhari the first copy of a compendium which chronicles his genuine efforts at transforming the gateway state for a sustainable future in his first year in office. The governor used the opportunity to inform the Nigerian leader of the desire of his administration to reconstruct the federal route leading to what he called the nation's biggest industrial hub, the Agbara Industrial Estate.
This route has continued to become an embarrassment, not just to us in Ogun State, but the entire country. This place is important to us for the economic survival of our state and the country at large. We have decided to intervene in this road ourselves as a state. I wanted Mr. President to know that we are going to have to construct that road at our expense, and I wanted him to inform the Federal Ministry of Works that we will be doing so, and we will also be making demands on them for a full refund of the construction of that road.
He also reminded the president of the earlier request by Ogun and Lagos state governments to take over and commercialize the Lagos-Ota-Abeokuta road.
The federal government cannot afford to build all the roads at the same time. We can take that burden off the federal government. And I'm glad to say that Mr. President was very pleased with these discussions and these applications, and he's promised to see what he will do to give us the necessary support so that, this can also help us in the economic upliftment of our region.
It was also an opportunity for Governor Abiodun to give his impression of President Muhammadu Buhari.
Mr. President is so meticulous, he's so methodical, he's extremely organized. And at any point in time, any governor wants to see the president, all you have to do is ask, and the president will give you audience. He will give you audience, he will take notes. And for those of us that know the president, he's someone who believes in constituted authority. So when a governor says, these are my problems, the president takes it to heart and he follows through with it. One cannot ask for a better captain of our ship. That is what I have seen in Mr. President, and that is what I probably think that most people will not know, because Mr. President is not a man of many words.
The governor described the recent increase in the pump price of petrol as well as electricity tariff as inevitable. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
The construction of federal roads, Minister of Works and Housing Babatunde Fashola has engaged federal controllers of works across the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT to bring them up to speed with government's expectation on timely delivery of ongoing road projects. At a webinar with the controllers, the minister tasked them to take ownership of roads in their domains and ensure regular supervision of the projects to ensure that contractors deliver on schedule. While emphasizing on government's huge investment in road infrastructure, the Minister of Works and Housing said controllers must act quickly in the event of distress on any road to ensure its rehabilitation, as government's committed to providing motorable roads across the country.
How well-built roads are, no matter how well-maintained they are, the forces of nature, climate change, unpredictable rainfall, windstorm, hurricanes across the world, they damage our infrastructure. Wear and tear also damage our infrastructure. So we want you to be the first responders there. So when these things happen, we expect our controllers as our points of service to be the first people there to assure people that, oh, government is already aware that this problem has occurred, announce what measures you want to take to give immediate relief.
And on to humanitarian affairs, the National Social Investment Program of the federal government has been applauded once again. The commendation comes this time around from focal persons appointed by state governors to oversee the effective implementation of various social impact projects. This was during a presentation on their scorecard to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development in an interactive session organized by the ministry in Abuja. Ruth Aguele reports.
I've been a victim of joblessness for over 4 years, but Empower came in to put a smile on my face.
Beneficiaries clearly excited about the impact of the federal government's national social investment programs in their lives. This feat was made possible with the role played by focal persons who ensure that these interventions are well implemented in grassroots areas across the 36 states and the FCT. Presenting their scorecards for the task given to them by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, they are optimistic of the programs with the successes already recorded, which has greatly impacted the lives of the beneficiaries.
We drive this process at state level, and we try as much as we could to see that the program operates within the established protocols.
And in Plateau State, we are very fortunate to have started the implementation of Empower Junior, which is establishment of ICT Center in 2 pilot schools.
Like we saw in Abia State some weeks ago, when we paid out 540 million to beneficiaries of the conditional cash transfer program. For the very first time in their lives, they received money directly into their hands.
For the ministry, these key interventions are timely, as they depict commitment in efforts by the federal government towards eradication of poverty in the country.
There is no doubt that the social investment programs are critical components of the present administration's activities and are vehicles through which His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari's vision of lifting 100 million people out of poverty in the next 10 years will be achieved. It is against this background that I urge every one of you to continue to give in your best to ensure the lives of those who are called to serve are made better.
There are high expectations from the facilitators for an improved service delivery to make a difference in the lives of the poor and vulnerable in the country. In Abuja, Ruth Aguele, NTA News.
Now, with the launch of manual on the use of sign language by interpreters to promote inclusive electoral process, persons living with disabilities, especially the deaf, now have hope for active participation in elections. Kenneth Nanim reports that the political inclusive manual is an initiative of advocacy group Inclusive Friends and its partners.
Document which will help INEC to further improve the relationship and the inclusive electoral process.
National President, Nigerian Association of Deaf, is excited that hope is coming the way of his members.
It gives us, we deaf people, our human right to have access to communication, to information, to all other things linked to the election processes.
Half of the problem, half of the challenges facing deaf is now less.
The deaf is an integral member of this society. They cannot be left out. And you know, when you leave them out that way, sometimes they riot. And people will say deaf is violent. They're not violent. They're only asking for their rights.
The advocacy group also researched on the cost of inclusive elections to improve access for persons with disabilities as a guide for the National Assembly on budgetary allocation for such special persons during elections. Manual on directives by the INEC on COVID-19 protocols for persons with disabilities was also unveiled. Kenneth Nanim, NTA News.
Disaster. Destruction of farmlands, property and loss of lives have become a yearly occurrence along River Niger, Benue and other communities. Environmentalists are of the view that dredging of the rivers Niger and Benue, coupled with construction of dams, could be the much-needed solution. Let's now join Musa Baba Aliyu for details.
The geographical location of Nigeria makes it the last point of billions of cubic of meters of water flowing from Mali through Niger Republic and the one coming from Congo through the neighboring Cameroon. The water usually passes through the major rivers, the River Niger and that of Benue, before emptying in the ocean. This is coupled with more than 200 billion cubic meters of water bodies available in the country. Experts observed that the narrowness of the water channels, abuses and construction of buildings on waterways and riverbeds were responsible for major flooding in the country.
This is River Lima. It's a tributary, one of the major tributaries of River Niger. And this flood you see occurs almost every year.
I had a call from Kano that there was a flood in Dambata, Mokoda, Gaya, and another local government that I didn't, and Ajingi.
Others suggest that if government will reveal the abandoned 1980 Zoro folder project, will go a long way in addressing flooding in more than 1,000 kilometers from Sabon Birni in Sokoto to Ingaski, boundary between Niger and Kebbi State.
And the idea was all the Fadama land there would be developed as an irrigation scheme, so that this place alone, with this quantum of water, can feed the whole of Africa.
Some parts of the dam, the irrigation, the schemes are yet to be developed. So it is our hope that the federal government will maximize the advantages that this dam provides, so that those schemes will be developed and we will have more farmers.
The 2012 flooding remains the worst in recent times. In Abuja, Musa Baba Aliyu, NTA News.
And Victoria Nyeche, an engineer, now joins us via Zoom to expatiate on mitigating the perennial destruction of farmlands, property and lives occasioned by flooding. Welcome to NTA International News. Victoria.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Engineer Victoria, let's start like this. The ravaging consequences of flood seem to be unabating in spite of measures to stem the tide. Are there other strategic measures that need to be put in place at the moment?
Thank you very much. Now, in the recent past, what we've seen is just some kind of reactions after the flooding has occurred. We have not been very proactive to ensure that we prevent this flooding. And that is really what we need to do. We've talked about construction of buffer dams for so long. It's been on the drawing board, it's been at the design stage. But that is just one major solution to this perennial flooding. If we have these buffer dams, the waters will be retained and slowly released into the rivers. And there are several uses, as we know, that we can have for this water. So instead of at a point you are complaining of insufficient water supply, and then at another point you are complaining of too much water supply. So it's either we never have enough, or we have too much, and that is really preventable. So we need to construct a buffer dam to ensure that we get out of this perennial flooding system.
It's like you just said, that it's been like talk and no work. Like each year, meteorological agency comes up with flood prediction, warning that people living around flood-prone areas should relocate. But non-adherence to these predictions has caused more damage to lives and property, leaving it in its wake tragedy of unqualified magnitude. When is this going to stop? Let me ask you, when is this likely going to stop?
Well, the fact is that relocating is not something people just wake up. Well, the fact is that people just wake up and do not even.
Let me listen. I'm listening to you.
Have somewhere to relocate to. If and stay, yes, but you find out that there are no camps that people can relocate to. So it's really difficult for people to move with their families. So I think there should be provision of camps, and not necessarily using schools, because what happens is that students are prevented from going to school because their schools now become refugee camps. That should not be the norm. There should be camps provided in islands where people can relocate to, so that when you want them to say relocate, they will have a place to actually relocate to.
At the moment, food security is under threat because thousands of farmlands in some states of the Federation have been taken over by flood, an indication that Nigeria may have food crisis. What do you see? What do you see as in the future?
I actually agree that when we have this kind of flooding, we actually have our food supply very endangered. And it just tells us that it's not just about losing property. We are losing our source of sustenance, and there's a need for everyone to be on deck. It's not just the farmer's problem, it's our collective responsibility. And we also have to think of the kind of farming that we can do even with the flood, because I know that there are other ways that farming can be done. So we don't just have to continue to do things the same way. It mustn't be the traditional farming system. It's time that we have to think outside the box and think of aquaculture, think of the kind of agriculture that we can do even with the rains.
Thank you, Engineer Victoria Neche, for joining us and speaking to us on flood and its ravaging effect. Now,
you're welcome.
This is news on NTA International, live from Abuja. More stories ahead on the news when we return after the break. The World Health Organization, WHO, makes strong recommendations on COVID-19 drugs based on new discoveries. Just as the Africa Centers for Disease Control seek support for coronavirus vaccine efforts. Joyce Ometu has a global update.
The World Health Organization has published guidance for clinicians and healthcare decision makers on the use of corticosteroids in COVID-19 patients based on new discoveries from latest scientific studies. An analysis of 7 international trials published by the American Medical Association shows that treating critically ill COVID-19 patients with corticosteroid drugs reduces death rates by 20%. Meanwhile, the head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, John Nkengasong, is urging all countries to join hands in a global effort to procure and distribute potential COVID-19 vaccines. The World Health Organization said 76 rich nations are now committed to joining a global COVID-19 vaccine allocation plan, which aims at buying and fairly distributing vaccine shots. And United States health officials have reportedly been notified that they should expect a coronavirus vaccine by November 1, 2020. Now, this was contained in a letter sent to the governors by the country's Center for Disease Control. In the meantime, Thailand has reported its first local coronavirus transmission after celebrating 100 days of non-transmission. At present, statistics by Worldometer show that the world has recorded 870,015 fatalities from COVID-19, while 26,328,771 cases have been confirmed. Out of these figures, Africa accounts for 1,274,708, with 30,387 fatalities, recording 232,571 active cases. Nigeria has 54,463 cases, 1,027 deaths, with 42,439 patients discharged. And that's a global update on COVID-19. I am Joyce Ometu.
The Nigeria Governors Forum is leveraging COVID-19 interventions to increase response capacity to the fight against the pandemic and urging more commitment for the reopening of critical sectors of the economy under the new normals. Abubakar Usman Akwanga reports that this was contained at the 16th communique of the forum's teleconference on COVID-19.
The NGF, in collaboration with Ministry of Health, is to release basic healthcare provision fund to eligible states to sustain services in healthcare delivery during the coronavirus pandemic. The forum noted the need to increase testing of COVID-19 as the economy gradually reopens and schools prepare to resume, as well as the conduct of elections in some states. The 36 state governors were commended by Rotary International for the seamless coordination of immunization in their states and received a Rotary International Polio Certification Award for their roles in eradication of the virus in Nigeria. The communique also reveals that State's Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability Program is introducing a new project with 50% properties to support states to implement 2021 urban electrification projects. Governors are also expected to nominate focal persons to interface with the Ministry of Petroleum Resources on the actualization of the National Gas Expansion Program, and states governments through their internal revenue services how to ensure seamless implementation of tax relief program for businesses and taxpayers. The Nigerian Governors Forum Technical Committee is working to finalize an acceptable framework for the implementation of the Executive Order 10. In Abuja, Abubakar Usman Akwanga, NTA News.
On COVID-19, President Muhammadu Buhari has approved Nigeria's transition into the third phase of the national response to COVID-19 for a period of 4 weeks with effect from Friday, 4th September. Similarly, the lifespan of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has been extended to December 2020. At Thursday's briefing, PTF said nationwide curfew has also been modified from 12 midnight to 4 a.m. in the third phase of ease of lockdown, while all restrictions on markets are lifted. All intra- and interstate restrictions on road and rail transport are also lifted. Public and civil servants below grade level 12 are still advised to work from home, and for elections, no face mask, no voting.
Before vaccine or any form of cure shows up,
let's deal with what we have so that we can protect ourselves, protect our loved ones, our families, and our communities.
For educational institutions, which includes daycare, primary, secondary, and tertiary care, educational institutions should begin the process of working towards potentially reopening within this phase. However, we strongly recommend that states conduct risk assessment to ensure all schools are at a level of compliance and create a monitoring mechanism to assess and monitor this level of compliance.
And we're satisfied with the preparations so far. We don't anticipate any hitches.
National response include low number of sample collection sites and rates of sample collection, and express the belief that Nigeria is not ready for a full reopening of the economy. But there has been sufficient progress to warrant relaxation of the restrictions. The Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, says discipline and commitment to executing core mandate will continue to be the watchword of the organization. Ben Mitu reports that the Director General stated this while inaugurating projects at NTA Lafia, Nasarawa State.
Through internally generated revenue, NTA Lafia built new infrastructure and rehabilitated old ones. Among the new ones, accommodation for welfare of staff as well as for those coming to Lafia on official engagements. The Director General commended the General Manager, the management and the entire staff for achieving the feat. He recalled how the station was before the posting of the General Manager, saying it is a wake-up call to his colleagues to generate resources and transform their stations.
You couldn't have achieved this thing, by working alone, So we need to put our heads together, put our minds to it, make things happen by initiating things. And you people in Lafia have done a very good job. I'm very proud of the entire workforce of NTA Lafia.
While addressing staff, Yakubu Ibn Mohammed challenged NTA stations on effective utilization of resources and entrenching excellent work ethics at all times. He reminds them to be disciplined at all times. Hamza Musa Makarfi says the DGs exemplified excellent leadership in changing the face of NTA and thank him for assisting the station. In Lafia, Ben Mitu, NTA News.
President Muhammadu Buhari joins governing party All Progressives Congress APC and Federal Executive Council FEC to celebrate with Secretary to the Government of the Federation SGF Boss Mustafa on his 64th birthday. President Buhari sends warm greetings to family, friends, professional and political associates of the legal luminary, party stalwart and chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, whose visionary and inclusive leadership style continue to strengthen the governing party and the administration with remarkable results. As the SGF turns 64, the president notes with gratitude his sacrifices and selfless service to the nation for close to 4 decades. And that's the news. Thank you for watching. Remember to connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists.